Hi, my name is Jeff Harding. I'm in search of perch on the Ice Shanty site. Wanted to take a few minutes to put this on video. It's how I make these wire worm jigs that I kind of learned the process from A-Bomb on the site. You can go to the jigging thread or the jigging section of the forum, and there's a couple topics on making homemade jigs. That's where I'll be posting this video. I'll probably do the video in two parts. First part, I'm going to show you how I make the jig, and the second part we'll do on finishing the jig and what kind of paints and what not to use. First of all, I use a couple different sizes of hooks. I use size 10 Daiichi hooks. You can use a size 12 or even as small as a size 14, but those are pretty small. Those are pretty hard to, you got to work with a real small diameter wire with those. Typically the most common size jigs that I make are for bluegill and perch fishing, even crappies. It's a size 10. These are wet nymph fly hooks. You can find them in the fly making section at Gander Mountain, Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops, whatever you happen to have in your neighborhood. I'll show you basically how I'm building these particular ones. I am using a larger diameter wire. This is a 3/32 diameter. It's a 50-50 solid wire. There's no core in it. There's no hollow core in it. It's 50-50 lead tin, so it's a little bit heavier. Some of them are 60% tin, 40% lead. That might be a little bit slower fall to it. But I'll clip off a piece that is about 3 inches, 2.5, 3 inches long. I'm going to start out by lining it up. I want to line this up angled, just like that, at an angle with that bottom part of the bend of the hook as it starts to come back up the shank. And I'm going to clamp it down on there. The way that I do that is I use a set of forceps. Typically these lighter duty forceps, they don't work very well with that. You need a heavier duty set like the Fraybill ones and some of the other ones that are out there. Basically, just clamp it right down on it. I don't know if you can see very well how I got that on there, just angled right on there. I'm ready now to start turning the wire around the shank of the hook. And you'll see where it starts out pretty loose, but if you just really torque on it, not only will it tighten your wrap up, but it'll also thin that wire out a little bit so it isn't quite as fat. Typically when you look at how thick that wire is, then you look at how it is laid on there, it thins out because I'm torquing it onto there real tight. You'll get to where you start tearing up your finger a little bit after a while with a callus just because you're putting a lot of pressure on it. But that makes it two things. One, it won't slide around on the shank of the hook. Two, it thins out the wire so it isn't so bulky and it forms the jig real nice. Once I've wrapped it all the way up where I've got that eyelet just kind of laying in there, what I'm going to do is trim up both ends of it. The way I do this is I'm using a small end cutter, but just as often I also use a small side cutter. The trick is if you're going to use a side cutter, don't use one where the cutting edge is beveled in on it, because you need to be able to get flush with the shank of the hook. So one where your cutting surface is right at the end there, or a side cutter that has a flush side on it that you can get right to the end. But what I'm going to do is just trim that end piece off, and I don't like those sharp edges that it leaves, so what I do is after I trim it off, just on the edge of it, I just kind of come around it a little bit, kind of smooth it out, just kind of form the end of it so it's just laid up real nice right onto the hook there. We're going to do the same thing at the top. Figure out a spot to start, let's say right here. Cut that down. I've got a sharp edge now. You can see the eyelet of the hook, but I've got a sharp edge there. What I need to do is work on getting this smoothed down a little bit. Get the edge of that smoothed down so it isn't so sharp. Still a little bit of an edge on there. I don't know how this is going to come out on video, but what I'm going to do is give you close-ups after each step so you can see. You can see where that's smoothed down and kind of lays right up. Now this is a jig that, because I didn't bend anything on here, when you put it on, it'll probably hang more at a 45-degree angle.